Hey, everybody. This is Matt Price. You might know me from dynastyleaguefootball.com, where I write. I also do the DLF Dynasty podcast with Ryan McDowell and Dan Myler. Maybe you know me from Dynasty Game Night with John Bosch and Rush Fisher. I don't know. But you'd think I'd have plenty of things to talk about between those podcasts and writing and everything. But I thought I would try to maybe add a little bit more content on my own. So one thing I was thinking about lately was going through recent mock drafts and kind of talking about my thought process behind each pick, maybe talk about some of the other picks that were made, that kind of thing. So if you're interested in that, you might be interested in this content. With that said, so just some background. Every month at DLF, we do some mock drafts, usually about 6 for the one quarterback leagues, just to kind of set some average draft position or ADP data for that month. And I participate in pretty much all of those. So I thought it might be fun to get some of that out there. So let's just jump right into it. So you can see on the screen there, this is the completed mock. This is the first one of the 6. And we typically have different people in each one. Sometimes Ryan, or maybe all of the time, Ryan jumps into all 6 of them since he runs the one quarterback mocks. So we have a little bit of varying opinions across them, and it kind of captures it. Obviously, 6 mocks is a bit of a small sample size, right? But it gives us an idea of where players are being valued in startup drafts. So as you can see here on the screen, pretty standard for the first 2 picks. Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley are probably going to be 1 and 2 in pretty much every draft. And Jonathan Taylor is getting up there too as probably the 3rd option, and sometimes even the 2nd or the 1st option in some of these mocks that I've seen. So those, because of that positional scarcity at the running back position, I think these 3 are probably going to be up at the top. And really, with the first 3 picks, those are the only 3 that I would consider either. The 4th guy, so at my first pick here at 1.04, I took DK Metcalf because I've been on the DK Metcalf as the wide receiver 1 in Dynasty train, so to speak, for I don't know, since like October or so. So I still think that's the case. I think at the 1.04, your other options, and certainly the other player that I considered was Alvin Kamara, again, to capture all that positional scarcity at the running back position, right? But I wanted to stay on brand and take DK here. There is an argument, I think, that wide receiver is so deep that there's really no reason to take a wide receiver in the first round. But for me, the potential upside of what DK can offer is just too attractive for me to pass up. So if we scroll through this first round here, you can see Kamara actually fell all the way down here to the 1.12, which in my opinion is a steal. I value him still over Derrick Henry, despite the massive season Derrick Henry still had. We all play a PPR points per reception league now, right? So Henry is, not as attractive to me. Obviously he has these huge rushing games on the ground, multiple touchdown upside just with his size and power and all of that. But I want my running backs to catch more passes than Henry has. And, I think he has improved in that situation, in that scenario, but he's also an older player, right? So I still want Kamara there at the 5 or even the 4 spot. I could have taken him there, but went with DK. So let's go down to my second round pick and what I was thinking. So Calvin Ridley fell here. I was actually planning on taking a running back at this spot. I was hoping that Ezekiel Elliott fell or Miles Sanders. Those would be my 2 ideal selections in this format. J.K. Dobbins, I don't think is going to make it there. Najee Harris is not going to make it there. DeAndre Swift is not going to make it there. But the Dynasty community in general, I think, is pretty down on Miles Sanders and Ezekiel Elliott. So I thought that was a chance there. But when that didn't happen, I wanted to pivot to wide receiver. And to me, the most valuable wide receiver at this point was Calvin Ridley. There wasn't really any other consideration there for me at this spot in the draft. So I didn't really plan on starting with 2 wide receivers with DK and Ridley, but those are both very exciting young players that are, they're alpha type receivers. They're definitely wide receiver 1s in Dynasty, so I felt pretty good about that. Didn't really consider Josh Jacobs, just not a big fan of what he has to offer. He has volume. He's kind of a volume player, right? And he doesn't catch the ball nearly as much as we thought he was coming out. Diggs, is a good pick. ETN was also a consideration here, I guess. But for my running back one, so to speak, I wasn't really interested in taking a rookie there. Gibson is interesting at 301. So let's just go to my next pick here. Chris Godwin at 304. This was a spot where I was hoping actually Clyde Edwards-Helaire dropped. So twice in a row, I got kind of sniped by the team drafting ahead of me in an effort to build my running back group. But, I'm not going to reach Joe Mixon. I think you can say that he's undervalued at 305 here, the 29th pick overall. But so many question marks with him. Not super attractive to me. So I went back to wide receiver for a third time in a row. Chris Godwin going in the first round of startups, or late first, maybe early second of startups at this time last year after his big 2019 season, but injuries in 2020 and kind of pushed him down to this range. And he could quite easily be a steal at this range. Mixon, again, like I said, not really consideration. Jamar Chase, the first rookie wide receiver off the board by Ryan, of course. It wasn't really a consideration of mine. I like to take some fabulous players in the first three rounds in general, unless I'm kind of playing around with strategy. So Godwin here at the 304 made sense for me. Going through here to the fourth round pick, my fourth round pick, James Robinson, finally able to get a running back. And I feel like Robinson is very undervalued at this point. He is valued outside of the top 20 running backs with their most recent ADP, and that seems like a mistake to me. I wrote an article recently on the trade value of James Robinson, and it's just not really there either. So he seems to be undervalued. Like if we're talking about rookie picks, I think James Robinson should probably be valued around that middle of the first round pick if you want to take those elite wide receivers in the 2021 class. But otherwise, after Najee Harris and after Travis Etienne, if James Robinson was in this class, the 2021 class, knowing what we know now about him, I think that he is a value, almost a steal, honestly, in the late fourth round. And as my running back one, I'm okay with that. It's a bad team, but they're getting Trevor Lawrence. They've got a new coach in Urban Meyer. I don't think that Jacksonville is going to spend a lot of draft capital bringing in another running back to compete with Robinson after what we saw him do last year. So as a running back one here in the fourth round, I think that is a pretty easy pick. And then I went back to the wide receiver position at 504 here, continuing to add to that stock. I've got those three young guys up top. And now I have Cooper Kupp, a little bit older, but he can provide some stability, I think, with his PPR upside. He's going to be a high target guy. They've got Matthew Stafford in tow now, so a little bit of an upgraded quarterback position. And if you guys have been following me at all, you know my love for Cooper Kupp. So this is not a surprise pick for me at all. I did want Claypool here just to add some more upside to the roster. Big playability, guy who broke out in year one. Quarterback play a little bit questionable there with Roethlisberger tailing off towards the end of the season. Not going to retire, but what does he have left? So I'm not sad about getting Kupp here. And from the wide receivers that went around this spot here, the only other consideration I really thought of after Claypool went off the board was down here at 508 was Deontay Johnson. Again, to capture. I think both he and Claypool are very exciting for Pittsburgh in the future, and both are I think valued about the same, which I think is right now. I think Claypool probably has higher ultimate upside, but Deontay Johnson is probably safer, more targets, targets in the short and intermediate area of the field, going to be used in the slot a little bit more, that kind of thing. So especially with Juju Smith-Schuster moving on. So let's keep going. Scrolling down. I really like this A.J. Dillon pick. I'm really coming around to him. After the top 18 to 20 or so running backs are off the board, you get down to guys like Kareem Hunt, guys like David Montgomery here. So once we get in that range, running back gets real ugly, right? So at that point, I want to take upside picks, and A.J. Dillon, if Aaron Jones moves on, I think that's a really fantastic pick and could actually work out. I've been taking him in the sixth round of some other mocks I've been doing lately too. So that kind of feels like the sweet spot for Dillon. Once you get past the top 20 or so running backs, Dillon becomes an option for me. And really, I would probably take him over David Montgomery at this point. So great pick there. My pick in the sixth round, I went back to wide receiver again. We're just stacking up those wide receivers very deep, obviously. as a position, but Rashad Bateman is my current wide receiver 2 in the class. I got him, several rounds after Jamar Chase went up here in the 3rd round to Ryan, I think, right? Where'd it go? Ryan took Jamar Chase at the 306. So, a 3-round discount on my wide receiver 2 from my wide receiver 1 in this class. I really like that. And, I got 4 solid wide receivers ahead of him. So if he doesn't work out in his rookie year, then we've got nothing but upside there for him. If he doesn't work out in his rookie year, you've got some value increase. If he doesn't, I'm not super worried about it. Landing spot's going to determine a lot for him, but I do think he is perhaps the most complete wide receiver in the 2021 class. So to get here in the 6th round seems like a value, right? 7th round, finally took a tight end, Mark Andrews. Going into the 2020 season, Mark Andrews was the tight end 3 behind just Travis Kelce and George Kittle for most people. So to get him here as the tight end 4 in this exercise feels like a little bit of a value, maybe a little bit earlier than I'd want a tight end if I'm not shooting for those upper tier guys. Typically, my strategy here is to take, a Kittle or a Kelce, and if I don't do that, to wait. But to see a guy with the upside that Andrews has already distributed, displayed on a pretty regular basis. He definitely had a lot of down games, but his big games, double touchdowns, lots of spike weeks there for Mark Andrews. So, tight end is typically a position you can punt, but to get one that has the upside to have a multiple touchdown game really in any week that he is a primary part of that passing attack is worth it in the 7th round. I think other considerations for here was running back, but when I looked at it, I just wasn't that excited about the running back position. At this point in the draft, all of the guys that I really want to target from this point has been taken already. You can see, even looking at this, like not many running backs has gone around him, around the 704 pick, all the way up to 605. No running backs. Leonard Fournette here at the 702, and there's just so many question marks with him going forward. Is he going to be on Tampa Bay? I don't know. Where's he going to end up? What's the situation going to be? Is he going to have competition? He did show out a lot in the playoffs and kind of improved his stock a little bit, both in NFL terms and in fantasy dynasty terms. But he got taken ahead of me anyway, but I don't think I would have considered him there regardless. A bunch of quarterbacks went off the board. Again, probably too early for me to take a quarterback in a 1 quarterback league in most situations. So Andrew stuck out to me. I'm already solid at wide receiver with 5 fantastic players. And I've got 1 solid running back, and just none of the guys here really looked attractive. So went to the tight end position. Scrolling through here, more tight ends, more quarterbacks, more wide receivers. None of these guys I would have taken over Andrews. So I feel like that was a good pick. So here we go to the 8th round, and late 8th round, and Russell Wilson's still on the board. He has fallen out of favor. He kind of always does at this time with dynasty managers. He had that hot start where he was the quarterback 1 from a points per game standpoint by a large margin, right? For much of the early part of the season. I think Dak Prescott might have been ahead of him in those 5 games that he played, but it was neck and neck between those 2. And then, of course, we know he fell off towards the end of the season once Seattle, for whatever reason, decided to go back to running the ball and playing defense, right? That's what Pete Carroll and that coaching staff really wants to do, even though they have one of the best quarterbacks in the league. But at this point in a 1 quarterback league, I'm happy to spend that pick on Russell Wilson. A little bit of rushing upside, not as much as we used to have with him, but still a decent amount. So got my quarterback, got my tight end, got 5 great wide receivers at this point, and I have my running back 1. As we move forward, feel good about all of those positions. So the only really option at this point, unless you're in love with the running back, or in love with the wide receivers at this point, is to go back to that running back position. Myles Gaskin certainly is not exciting, but much like Jacksonville, they found a guy that was cheap, right, and put up decent production for them and was productive on bad teams, to be honest with you. So, there's a chance that since Miami has so many picks, they might take a luxury pick on a running back. I don't think they're going to do it high. So in that case, it seems like there's a better than average chance that they go into the season with Gaskin as the lead back again. Certainly not a sexy pick, but as your running back 2 this late in the draft, after we've formed a very wide receiver heavy strategy for our team early on. I think you could argue it's not the best pick here. Maybe we wanted to take Ronald Jones instead, who went down here at 909, 105 overall. But again, what's the situation in Tampa Bay? Is Leonard Fournette going to be back? They drafted Keyshawn Vaughn last year to have competitions. You got to think that he's going to be more involved in 2021 and going forward. So, Gaskin, while it's a risk and it's not a sexy pick, I think it's a relatively safe pick. And if nothing else, he's going to be involved there. Even if they were to bring in a high price free agent or draft someone highly, which I just don't think they're going to do at this point with all the other needs on that team, especially in the wide receiver department. They have Devontae Parker and they have Preston Williams, who every time he seems to break out just gets hurt again. So I think they have enough needs there that they may not seriously address the running back position. Going down to the 10th pick, we have Trey Sermon. So building up that running back crew, Trey Sermon is probably, I haven't really settled so much on this guy. It's really going to depend on a lot of draft capital where he goes, but he was productive for Ohio State and is a pretty good all-around back, I think. So if he lands somewhere, he might be able to contribute as part of the committee for me. So we're really just kind of throwing darts at the running back position now that the rest of our team is very solid, and Trey Sermon seemed like a guy with some upside at this point in the draft. Moving down, like I said, I would rather have him than David Johnson. I don't know. Obviously, very productive in spurts for the Texans, but it's going to be a bad team if Deshaun Watson doesn't come back. What are they going to do at quarterback? David Johnson just getting older and older, so I would rather invest in the youth at that point. Philip Lindsay, one of my favorite players at the running back position in general, obviously was behind Melvin Gordon at times, but honestly, I think looked better than Melvin Gordon when he was healthy. A very injury-riddled season for Lindsay in 2020, but very talented player. He's going to be a free agent. He could go somewhere else. I'm not really banking on him getting a lead back role, but I think he's too good to keep off the field. He plays with that chip on his shoulder as an undrafted free agent, kind of like James Robinson, honestly, in that regard. And he's shown that he can play in the league. So for him, it's a health standpoint. And, as I think he's running back 4 at this point, 3 or 4 at this point, I'm happy to kind of throw him there and play kind of a committee approach with my running back 2 position each week as a starter, with Robinson, of course, leading the way. So going down to 1209, Preston Williams, I talked about earlier, he got hurt again right as he was breaking out in 2020. The same thing that happened in 2019. He was actually more productive than Devontae Parker in his rookie season in 2019. This guy coming out would have had a lot more draft capital than he did, but some off the field concerns, so kind of pushed him down and completely off a lot of NFL teams' board. But he's shown he can play in this league. Just a matter of staying healthy and putting it all together for Preston Williams. At 13th, this is not my favorite pick, Kadarius Toney. Honestly, this was. I generally don't start looking at rookies until we get to January, February. Once we finish the fantasy season and the NFL playoffs are over, I get a little bit of a late start. He had a lot of hype. Now that I've watched a little bit more of him, it's not my favorite player. Breakout age, dominator rating, all those metrics that we use to really evaluate these guys from a statistical standpoint aren't really there with Kadarius Toney, at least to a level that I would like them to be. So it's kind of a dark throw pick. Again, already have 5 to 6 very solid receivers. So just adding a little bit of youth and upside there. And we're in the 13th round. And really, once you get to the 11th, 12th, maybe even the 10th round, you're really just shooting for upside, or at least that's how I operate typically in these leagues. I'm either looking for absolute upside or just looking at places where I can fill in veterans that I know are going to produce on a limited range and can be thrown as a bye week. So this was a clearly upside pick. And around him, maybe I could have, maybe if Antonio Brown could have jumped there. But, with my receivers, I just don't think a player like that's really going to ever break my starting lineup unless there's injury. So Naheem Hines is interesting, but Jonathan Taylor is clearly the guy, right? So I don't really see too much upside with him. Could have taken a quarterback 2 with one of these guys, but Russell Wilson is so solid. I don't know why I would do that. Freiermuth is really interesting. I've been watching him lately, and as an arbitrage play on Kyle Pitts, because I'm not going to take a rookie tight end in first round of the rookie draft. I'm just probably not going to do that, especially where he's been going in the middle of the first round. So Freiermuth is a hedge in the mid to late second of rookie drafts. Very interesting player, very physical, great with the ball in his hand, used in a variety of ways as a receiver out of the backfield, and it just depends on where he goes, where he lands, and how he's going to be used. So very high up tight end pick, I think. And moving down, Anthony McFarland, running back, again, just more dart throws. James Conner is done. Is Benny Snell the guy? I don't know. Are they going to invest highly in that position? Perhaps. Najee Harris feels like a really good pick for the Steelers, but are they going to want to invest that much capital in that position? Maybe Javonte Williams later in the draft is a potential. But I think McFarland, who they took last year, is going to have a role. He profiles more for me as a kind of a change of pace or receiving back, very good receiver, speedy, quick, in open space. So I'm not sure he's going to ever be a lead back, so to speak, in a committee, but it's possible. So again, we're just kind of throwing darts to play committee approach with our running back 2 spot with this particular team that we've drafted, right? I would have loved to have Keyshawn Vaughn here at the 15. In fact, I probably should have taken him at the 1409 spot because, like I talked about earlier, that running back situation in Tampa Bay is so unsettled, and I'm not a believer in Ronald Jones. I know he had a pretty good season. He's had a couple of pretty good seasons in spurts, but he's still not a pass-catching back, and Keyshawn Vaughn is a pass-catching back, so he's somebody I would have liked. But Gus Edwards did fall, and Edwards was arguably the second best back on that team. Maybe for spurts, he was even better than J.K. Dobbins in some regards, right? So I don't know if he's going to be back with Baltimore at this point. Maybe he is. If he is, then it clouds his situation a little bit. Baltimore, again, is such a run-heavy team, right, that Gus Edwards is probably going to be involved even if he is back. And if he's with another team, there's a good chance that he's the best back in the roster. Like if he was to go to Tampa Bay, for example, I think he's the best back on that roster. So not saying that's going to happen, but he is, I can't remember if he's unrestricted or restricted free agent, but he definitely doesn't have a contract yet for 2021. So interesting, deeper stash to kind of watch this offseason. And going down to 16, to finally took a backup quarterback. Jared Goff just moved to Detroit. As a backup, it's whatever. In a real startup draft, I might not even take a backup quarterback this far. And honestly, guys, in these mock draft exercises, quarterbacks and one quarterback mocks fall much later than I have seen them go in actual real life drafts. Everybody in this league are very experienced in this mock draft, are very experienced players. They know the drill with these. So if there's one position that I wouldn't take too much from, at least as we get down into the quarterback 2 range, it's these guys. Because honestly, I think Jared Goff is probably going earlier than 1609 in a typical startup draft. But as a backup, fine with that. Probably will never start over Russell Wilson except for on a bye week, right? Same thing with tight end position. If I have a solid guy like Mark Andrews, I'm probably not going to invest really any more picks in that position in a startup. You can pick up a waiver wire guy to fill in, but at 17th round for this particular exercise, OJ Howard injured basically the entire 2020 season, right? But was showing off a little bit. What's going to happen with Gronk? We don't know. Is he going to be back for another year? Cameron Brate, obviously, pretty good as well. Tanner Hudson even filled in a bit while Howard was out. But we know that Howard has all of the things that we want to see in a tight end. He just hasn't got the usage. And he's such a good blocker. They use him there a lot. I know I'm making excuses, but I still think upside is there with OJ Howard in the 17th round as my backup tight end. Love all day. Going down to the 18th round here now. Quintez Cephas, one of my favorites. Currently, actually, the only wide receiver under contract with Detroit. A later round pick, a guy who did not show off on the combine at all, questionable athletics in terms of speed, but his size and his ability to go up and catch jump ball 50-50s, especially for an inaccurate quarterback like Goff is at times. I think that's going to be a bonus, especially in the red zone. Certainly a long shot to be an every week starter for a fantasy team, but I think at the very minimum, he's going to be the wide receiver 2 or 3 in that Detroit offense. We don't know if Golladay is going to be back. If he's not, and Detroit, drafts a rookie in the first round, which Jamar Chase has been mocked there. Devonta Williams has been mocked there. If that's the case, then Cephas is going to be the wide receiver 2, I think, in that offense. Danny Amendola is not going to be there again. And after that, there's really nothing else at that Detroit wide receiver core that we really care about. So again, just stacking up on that wide receiver, somebody that since we're so good at that position right now, somebody we do not need to produce, and even in year 2 for him, right? 19th round, another upshot running back, Rashad Penny. former first-round pick for the Seahawks, injured at the very tail end of the 2019 season with an ACL, I believe. So didn't really get any play in 2020, basically sat the entire season. And Chris Carson is a unrestricted free agent. He's probably back, but if not, and Seattle doesn't invest in that position again, Penny has a chance to especially pay off a 19th round startup draft capital. So somebody we can have a good pick committee, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. We only spent a 19th round pick. Last pick of this mock for me, AJ Green, wide receiver, Cincinnati, but probably not there. He was a very popular choice as a comeback player in 2020 after missing all of the 2019 season. Memory's a little fuzzy there, but formerly elite, obviously older player now. In that age, in that Julio Jones age, came out in the same exact draft class all those years ago, and it seemed like when he was playing in 2020 that his best years were certainly behind him. Right, he had trouble with all kinds of stuff last year, to be honest with you. Trouble getting open at times, trouble catching the ball at times. So I don't know what's going to happen with AJ Green, but as a formerly elite player on the end of my roster, if he works out, cool, maybe he cracks the starting lineup. If he doesn't, no skin off my back in the 20th round, at the end of the 20th round, right? So all upside for this pick, easily cuttable if I have to pick up a waiver wire. Jim, clearly he's not being valued by anybody else, being passed on 20 times, right, by these other dynasty managers. So yeah, so that's pretty much it for my draft. Just a quick repack. We can come up here and I can display just my team so you can see the final product here as we wrap up this first video. So DK Metcalf, Calvin Ridley, Chris Godwin, Cooper Kupp. That is a strong wide receiver for you guys. Following that up with Bateman as my 5. Like if he turns out, then we have an incredible starting lineup, and we also have some trade capital to move around for other players, probably running backs, right? Because running backs, remember you guys, if you are a strong competing team, it's a good idea to spend high on a running back because they're going to be the biggest difference makers for you. But if you're not competing, then don't waste your draft capital, don't waste your trade capital on bringing in a running back, because they are going to decline in value more than any other position. Young stud running backs are the gold standard in fantasy football and in dynasty. But if you're not competing, you're just going to be losing value on those guys year over year, whereas these wide receivers are going to continue to gain or hold their value. So we elected to take James Robinson in the 4th round after missing on our targets in the 2nd and 3rd, and so on and so forth. So we just kept adding dart throws to that running back position. And, if this was a team we were going to play out, that would be a position of focus since we're so solid at wide receiver, quarterback with Russell Wilson, and tight end with our man Mark Andrews. So really a running back is the only running back 2, honestly, is really the only need on this team. So that's going to be a focus of this team going forward. Every team after a startup has holes in it, and for this one, it's the running back 2 position and the depth behind it. So not a bad place to be. I feel like this was a very strong draft, especially if you're a wide receiver heavy kind of guy, which often I am. So there you have it. There's our first video. If you liked it, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, all of those things you do. If you want to interact with me, you can find me on Twitter at MattPriceFF. Listen to me on all of the DLF shows, and I hope you guys enjoyed that video. We'll probably do it again.